Congratulations on being named the Academic Dean for the 2014-2015 school year. What is the purpose of the new history and English curriculum?
Well, the purpose is to bring a kind of order to the history curriculum, a kind of organization that didn't exist traditionally. Basically, when I first got here, freshmen and sophomore both took world history, and then juniors went on to take U.S. history, and then we had kind of a scattershot series of senior electives. They didn't really work together in any sort of order. There was no good reason to have them in that kind of organization. And so we began thinking last year about kind of a more logical way to sequence the classes so that we were moving from year to year in a way that made sense to us. And that's how we kind of hatched on the idea of starting freshman year with local history, doing Buffalo and Western New York, going on to sophomore year, doing U.S. history, going on to junior year, doing world history. We like the idea that we're sort of starting out very, very local, very, very close to home, and sort of gradually expanding outward, familiarizing students with, kind of the history of an ever-widening circle of communities.
Okay. Can you talk a little about the flipping the classroom method and how it is being implemented at SEM?
Sure. Flipping the classroom, doing things like recording video lectures and then posting them to a YouTube channel, something like that, that frees up a lot of time because a student can be reading a textbook on her own. She can be using class time to discuss primary source documents and thought-provoking critical thinking essays, and then still get an essay, still access a lecture covering that content on her own time, and thus be prepared for more traditional assignments. So basically, the flipped classroom, blended learning, it allows us to be more creative. It allows us to do more. It's not just a teacher standing up at the head of the classroom saying, this is knowledge, write it down. We can use our class time to do things that are much more dynamic, much more creative, much more interactive. And then we can still get that kind of lecture component as well.
Can you talk about the importance of creating citizens and scholars?
Yeah, one of our sort of major realizations, I think, in the process of revamping the history curriculum was that citizenship is really important to us.
Okay.
And we didn't know that at first. We set out last year starting to kind of rethink the history curriculum, and we talked a lot about skills, reading, writing, historical thinking skills, spatial and geographical thinking skills, stuff like that. And we talked a bit about content as well. But sort of the question of citizenship and of civics, knowing how to be and sort of working on being an active participant in your community, that kept coming up. It kept sort of creeping into our discussions. And we realized that it was a value for us as a department. And we started thinking about kind of the best possible way to organize our course sequence so that we emphasized citizenship somehow, civics somehow. And that was kind of a major part of restructuring the class. It wasn't just that it's interesting to study the history of Western New York and the geography of Western New York and then U.S. history and then world history. But we kept realizing that if you think about it, all of us as grown-ups are going to be or are already citizens of these different kinds of community. We live here in Western New York, we participate in this community, we are affected by the things that happen here. In a broader sense, we are all U.S. citizens, we are all world citizens. And we saw kind of that new core sequence as a really exciting way to introduce this concept to students, that as freshmen, they're not only learning about the history of Western New York, but they're really being encouraged to take ownership of their community and to think of themselves as stewards of Western New York.